Thank you, Debra. I'm gonna go ahead and just go and get started. So our goal for the webinar is to help everyone understand the importance of storytelling, which I'm sure that you already know, but we're just going to emphasize on that, and learn some core elements about an effective story, how to tell a story effectively, and then be able to or help you organize what we usually call a pitch, help you organize that as in a way that you present your story. And the skills that you already have, we're just going to technically reinforce them and in the way that we'll present some technical points on storytelling. So the webinar will have two components. One will be the first element will be more theoretical. We're going to discuss about the why story and that type of stories and how to actually put the story together. And then the second part will be a more practical elements. Then let's get started.
Okay, I hope you can all hear me. So let's start with why storytelling and why do we even want to talk about this? And I think if you think about it, what's some of the early ways you learn things? You probably remember your mom or your dad telling you stories, like the little boy who cried wolf and there was no wolf, and he cried again and there was no wolf, and next time there really was a wolf but nobody believed him, and that's how they start to emphasize to you how to tell the truth. Well, everybody loves stories. We've been telling them and hearing them all of our lives, and so it's an easy tool to use. It appeals to the donors and it appeals to non-donors. In other words, sometimes you know somebody might give, so that's your donor and you're telling your story to that person, but they might tell that story to somebody else that you never even saw, and you get a new person. So they they work, they spread easily, they're very effective, and people remember them because they're meaningful. It helps get people involved. A story can be much more emotional and evocative than a spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers on it. It's very engaging. Now, of course, we want our stories to be true. I mean, they have to be factual, but they are engaging. And the wonderful thing about the storytelling is a story is a tool you never have to plug in. You don't have to worry about your tech stuff. It's something you've been doing all your life, and we're just going to help you look at how to do it better and be a little bit more succinct, maybe. They're flexible, they're adaptive. You can use stories with in a book, you can write them down, you can tell them face to face, you can tell them over the internet. They're very easy to use. And so that's one of the reasons that we want to emphasize them. And I also want to say that if you have a question at any time, this is a chat room. You can, ask to interrupt, and we'd be happy to have you do that. Next slide, please.
Different type of stories there is. There are many, many different type of stories. A story could be a bio, it could be about the community, it could be about an organization, it could be about the leadership of the organization. But when it comes to fundraising, usually we emphasize on three different types of stories. It could be a donor story, it could be an impact story, it could be a thank you story. Donor stories are usually stories that are around a donor. You're emphasizing on how this person has seen the work that the organization is doing, and they've gotten involved. And usually, those type of stories are really well sound when you put them on a newsletter or you put them on your website, because they can sort of show that it's not just one person, it's not just you saying that the organization is important and that's a cause that's important for people to get on board, but it's actually people that are engaging, that are giving their own money to it. And it is also really good if you can get an actual donor to in a presentation where you're meeting other donors, or they'll be talking and actually making the ask for you. That's one of the best way to tell donor stories. And then the other type of stories, as I mentioned, is impact stories. And usually impact stories are stories that talk about your services, the beneficiaries, and sort of explain the programs and the impact that the programs is having in people's life or in the community involved. And so usually those stories are good to tell at an event, or if you are meeting potential donors for that you are trying to get involved and donate to the organization, then that's a story that they want to hear. They want to hear the difference that this organization that you're involved with is making. And then the thank you story is also a type of impact story, but usually it's people that are already involved in the organization, people that are already donating to the organization, and you're just selling them stories. As you see right now, for instance, One World is using the 52 stories. We're telling a story every day, but when we do that, we are also saying when you give, that's what happens. Also, a way to ask people to continue to give to the cause. And usually that works well if you're sending out emails or newsletter, or if you're posting on social media. We're gonna move on to some very important steps as you that can help you tell an effective story. So we have two different elements. We see it as a two-wheel thing. So there's inward and outward. On the inward side, it's all the work that I have to do as the storyteller. And then the outward, what is it that I need to know from this audience side to be able to tell a story that actually match their own reality and that is effective to them. And I'm gonna pass it to Debra as she continues that.
I have to unmute myself. Yeah. So I'm sort of looking at the preparation end, and first you have to research your organization. You have to know what you're actually talking about. You want to collect stories. You don't have to do all the stories yourself. You can just collect them. You can get them from the clients, the people that your organization serves. You can get them from other donors. You can get them from colleagues. You can, just write them down and keep a little file so you know. Make sure that you can talk about your organization, the mission and the vision and the programs. What do they actually do? Why do we care about this? What are the programs? You should be able to do this very succinctly. I call it the elevator speech. You know, if you're going up in the elevator with a big donor and you have them till the 12th floor and you're on floor one, you want to be able to say, my organization has improved the nutrition for 250 kids a year. Those children would be malnourished if we didn't do what we do. So you want to be able to say that and be very clear with that. And you need to gather what we call evidence to set the context in your story. Um, and by evidence, I mean this is data, this is facts, this is statistics. These are the things that, especially I know you guys probably do grants, and you know how funders, they want to have, how many of this and how many of that, but all the different kinds of evidence. How do you know it's really working? But also we're talking about what's going on in the community. We have a 40% unemployment rate. That's a fact. That's if I made that up, but I mean, so you want to be able to make the reality clear of what's going on in your community. So why does your program actually exist? And then this is one that I don't see often in advice about storytelling, but I think it's really important for what you're doing and what I'm doing. We want to imagine what questions a donor could have. And then we're going to incorporate those answers into our presentation so they don't even have to ask them. And I think, if I trusted the technology more, I'd ask you to brainstorm a couple of questions a donor might have, but I'll give you an example of what I've noticed some donors have, they want to know how they can be sure that the money's really going to the program. That's one question donors have. So think about all those things and make sure that you weave that into your story, as it were. Questions? Okay,
Okay, so research your audience. As I was saying earlier, two sides of things, two sides on everything. So you research on your own side the programs that you're involved. You make sure that you know your own story, but also you want to make sure that you know the audience, the people that you're targeting. And part of that is getting to know what motivates them, um, what actually matters to them. Because if you're telling a story that this is not something that I'm very interested in donating to environment, and you're telling me a story about children, then this is not something that's going to move me. So you need to make sure that you know the audience, you know what their own interests. You need to know what the values. Who are they? What is it that makes them, or that actually that they care about? Um, what are the personal stories? I think a lot of time people connect to a story that they see themselves into. And so if I might or myself, like I had my father, he was building housing, and I know that he was at some point involved in building schools, and this is something that he really cares about. And so when you're telling me a story about your interest of building a new school, then I can relate to that, because of my own story. What is my ability in terms of, what can I do, or what can I do? There are things that you may be asking me. Unfortunately, I don't have any ability to provide in that area, and so you want to make sure that, this is something that also you have really good information on. And then one other thing is how to best share the story. So where do I get my information? Is it am I somebody that actually like to have a one-on-one conversation, or would I reply to an email? So you want to make sure that you know all those different things, not just the person in himself and themselves, but also what they can and cannot do, both in terms of, financially, but also in terms of, access.
So, one of the ways you're going to want to get started in getting prepared for your telling your story is you need to set your goal. Um, if you don't know where, as Lewis Carroll said in Alice in Wonderland, if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. So sit down with yourself and say, what am I really trying to accomplish? What needs to be done? You might have a minimum goal, which might be, I just want to pique interest. I just want people to know about this. I just want to start laying the groundwork. That's fine. If you know what you want to do, you'll know how to get there. But you might have a stretch goal. I want them to donate thousands of dollars because my school needs thousands of dollars. Then that's going to tell you, oh, I have to have a different story, and maybe I have to have a different audience if that's the kind of thing I'm going to do. So it's one of those things where the clearer you are about your goal, the easier it will be.
You want to choose your medium. The medium is the way through which you want to tell the story. I think part of that, you want to have the knowledge of what is it that actually you can personally do. Are you a better writer, or are you better at actually talking to somebody? So know your own, capability, and then capitalize on that. Also, you want to make sure that you're diversifying your methods, and that is making sure that you're reaching out different crowd. And part of that, because you are targeting maybe such a broader and larger group, So there are people, even if they are in the same pool of donors, they have different access. They are rich, they can be reached differently. And so the more you can diversify your story and the way that you tell them in the medium that you choose, the better it is for you as in terms of having an effective story, an effective reach. Accessibility, again, it's how to reach people. How can they access information? And I think also part of that is, as I said earlier, it's getting to know an audience. And if you know them, then you can craft your message in a way that actually they're going to get reached through the medium that you choose. And the history, part of that is also learning if you have any information about them in terms of what they've done in the past, where they actually donated, or through what they've donated, then you have that information that you can also build on. So if you know that that person, that particular person like to have a one-on-one conversation, and that's how they actually donated $10,000 last year to a particular charity, then use that to your advantage. Set up a meeting and tell them the story that you want to tell them, and then track those information as well as you move forward, because you want to use your own information to build on it so that next time you know exactly who and where and how to reach them. And so it's important that you are keeping a record of everything that you do. And when you can, it depends on how you actually choose your medium. You'll also realize that there are people that you're going to tell a donor story. There are people that you're going to tell uh, an impact story, and there are people that's going to get moved on to the thank you stories that they've donated in the past, but you would like for them to donate again. And so you use that to tell them an impact story while you're thanking them.
So you want to be sure. So you've set your goals. You've figured out who your audience is. Part of your preparation is just to organize your stories, so that you can be cogent and succinct, and so you're confident. I know none of us really want to have to ask, but we're going to talk more about how to feel better about that. But one way is to be confident so that you're organized. Another thing you can do ahead of time is to assemble your supporting materials. You know how in marketing they call them collateral materials, and you need to have that. So sometimes it's maybe a craft that you got from that area. It might be some handout, might be simple donor cards. Remember, you want to make it so easy for them to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing, but easy to do the right thing. So I used, for example, I did a fundraiser at my house, and I was talking about raising money to build a school building that had, and we already have the septic tank, and we're ready to put it up. And one of the reasons I was talking about the septic tank is this is an area that has no sewage, proper sewage. So there was, yuck in the street. And I had a picture of that, with a child having to cross that street to go to the old school building. It was very effective, much more effective than anything I could have said. There it was, a picture. So, use everything you got to make sure. So you want to prepare and have those. You also want to rehearse. And let me just give you one caution about this. You want to rehearse for your comfort, but not so much that you lose your passion, that your enthusiasm doesn't show through. It sounds rote. You don't want to rehearse that much. Just once or twice run through so that you kind of know how you're going to do it. And maybe, in front of your significant other so that you practice eye contact and that kind of thing. If you're going to do this in person, do it in front of the mirror, do it in front of your dog, whatever it takes, so that you're comfortable, but you don't lose your enthusiasm, your excitement. So that's part, and you've gathered all your information.
This is a very important section. make your story compelling and appealing. You have many things to your advantage that could easily help you translate in making your story appealing and compelling. One, the first thing, as Debra was mentioning, you want to rehearse not so much to lose your passion, because the passion is one of the best things that you have. It's being able to tell your own story. What makes you so passionate about this cause? What makes you so passionate about this organization? You have to be able to transfer that to the donor, transfer that to the listener. It's being able to tell them why you became involved, why you remain involved in this organization or in this program. Um, you want to also make sure that you're presenting some data. Debra mentioned earlier, there are some factual information. When you bring them to the table, those information, they are undeniable. When you tell somebody this is a community where children have absolutely zero access to education, and that's, you can bring on statistics and say, there's 40% of unemployment rate, as Deborah mentioned earlier. There is um, only one school, and that's located 25 miles away or something like that. Just being able to tell those important facts, those things are important for somebody that's listening to your story that have no context of what it is or the gravity of the situation. You want to be able to tell them the progress that has been made. Um, People want to know that they are not the one that's going to just come in and do everything, but there has been some progress made. There is an organization that's doing a job and they are making a difference. And you are telling them to be part of that vision. And the ambition, the vision, show them how big this is. And this is not just a little thing where they're going to drop some money and then they'll forget about it, but they are going to be part of a team. When you talk to them, you want to use the word we. We can do this together. We can do it, because people like to feel that they're part of something. And I think with that, that can make your story more appealing, more compelling, because people see there is a need, there's the fact, you have passion about it, and the ambition, the vision of all of this is so much bigger, and what their contribution is not going to be something just drop it there and forget about it, but it's going to be part of an organization and they are part of it. And so that makes your story really, really compelling. So now we're gonna move on to getting your story ready. What are some key elements that you actually need to to create that story that we're talking about?
Okay, so you probably know all this, but let's just sort of go over it one more time. A fundraising story in its most basic form has sort of a formula. Who is this story about? There have to be an actor, and it could be a community, it could be a child, it could be the beneficiary of the program, it could be a donor, it could be you, but who's the story about? And what's the problem that the character faced? I mean, how do we, you want it to be interesting, right? So what what was the issue? What happened? I'm talking about building a school. So, the problem that my kids are facing, our kids are that the, there is no school in that area. So, that's pretty clear. So then you want to talk about the solution. What has helped? How did it help? Where, that was part of what Meschac was saying. You want to talk about progress. It's not that we've never done anything, because we, in fact, built a school in a different neighborhood of this town. And now it's working, and the kids are much happier, and they're better fed, and they're getting their education. So, how did we do that? So, that might be part of it. And then what's number 4 here is not really a step, but a sort of a how-to. Always use phrases that express the uniqueness of the story. Use phrases and words that are evocative, that are that hook people's emotions. So while yes, you have data and evidence to set context, you also want to make sure that you're talking about these are real people. Real things happen to them. They've overcome huge obstacles, and yet they're doing, you know, these are folks with a huge unemployment rate, and and getting school uniforms is really hard, and yet they're doing it. How are they doing that? And the most important thing, the key that I find is the most important is there has to be a call to action in this story. It's kind of like the moral of the story that your mom might have told you. There has to be a call to action. What do you want them to do? And the more specific you are, the better. Um, this is the part where you've got them all motivated, you got them all excited. They can see the community, they can see the problem, they want to help. Now you're giving them an opportunity to help. So be very clear about what it is you want them to do. They've seen the reality because you had evidence. They you know what's going to stand out for them. You know what the donor is interested in, so you've woven that into your story. You've woven into how things have changed and how they still need to change. So don't forget your call to action. That's if you only remember one thing, make sure you remember that. Let me get to the next slide. So in the structuring of this, just like you structure a letter or a lot of other things, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You want to have a clear beginning. You want to have a clear end. You're taking people on a journey with you. So there's an opening scene. You're setting some context. You're helping people see the reality. And then maybe that, the problem part, what's the problem or the crisis? And maybe you have several of them. Well, we got this done, and then this happened, and then we had to fix that, and then we got this. So it all builds up to the tension, and it builds up to a climax, and then there's a denouement. Then we settle it, we fix it, we get somewhere, and now we're on to the next set of problems, but we've got our call to action, specific role that they can play and how. And it may be donating money, but it may be give me a list of other people who might be interested in this. Maybe that's what you want. Because you already set your goals in the beginning, so you know what you want. So the call to action should be pretty easy. We've got someone who's given us a chat with some very nice suggestions. So let me just read this from Marion. Thank you. I have found that people's emotions are launched when I share quotations that the children I serve have made. Of course, you get permission from the child to quote them and from their parents, but if they don't want you to, of course you don't. But I think that's another way of you would weave that into your structure. When you're getting to the denouement, you're saying, we did this and this is how it worked. So I think that was a great comment, Marion. Thank you. Meschac, I think we're ready for the next thing. Remember to be triumphant about this. When you end, you have to end on a good note.
So there are a few tips in terms of actually that can help you as you tell a story. One I'm sorry, my internet was just giving up. So I was saying that you want to make sure that as you tell the story, you're actually being yourself. So it's not. It's kind of goes back to the same questions of how much do you rehearse, because you want to make sure that your passion and you actually stay genuine and stay yourself. And then remember, it's not about you. This is an opportunity that you're giving to somebody to join to a cause. So you're not asking money for yourself, so don't feel bad about it. You're actually asking or giving the opportunity to someone to be part of something bigger, um, and um, and just giving them a chance to actually serve. And you have to recognize that your own story, as I said earlier, is a good tool. So use that once, especially in the case of a champion. You are also, I know many of you are also donors, even if you don't donate financially, but you're giving your time and you're this is a cause that you're advocating for, and so you have a story to tell and use that. The other thing, you want to be clear and specific about the needs, and also making sure that you're coming clear enough across as far as what is it that you are looking for. What is the gift? What is the size of the gift? How can they actually contribute to the cause? And then be honest, and persist. Some people, they might say no at the first time when you talk to them after you tell them a story, but the thing is, sometimes they just don't get it. And persistence can help in terms of helping them to really understand what is it that you're asking them to be a part of. And that could be very good. And part of that is being able to tell another story if you have to. That's why I said, be ready to tell more than one story. Some people, for instance, if you tell a story about a little boy, but they are actually interested in little girl. So you might want to make sure that you actually have a different story that actually for a little girl, because that also shows a different facet of the program. So that actually giving opportunity for, it's not gender based, but it's everybody has an actual opportunity in the program. So some people actually they're seeking for those kind of things. And then the other thing, you want to pay attention and listen. A lot of time the listener is actually giving you cues. So let's say you are on a stage and you're telling a story, you can tell whether or not the audience is engaged. And you have to be able to pay attention and listen, to not make it just a monologue, just something that you are telling, but rather make it part as if it were a conversation. And that's a really nice segue to what I just said. If a story is not about the hero, he will not listen. And here I make a rule: a great and interesting story is about everyone, or it will not last. So I think this is a great quote to what we're talking about, because you want to make up your story is about the person that's listening to it, but it can also touch or tap into broader audience. And so it's make it compelling, make it interesting enough that anybody that would listen to the story can feel that, wow, this is a great story, and they would like to follow through and donate to your cause.
So we're going to actually have a chance to practice in a way, because Meshac's going to tell a story, and I want you guys to listen to that story and be ready to comment and tell us all the things that he does well, because when you isolate them by observing them, then you'll be able to incorporate that ability yourself. So try to look for things like how he involves you at the beginning. How does he set the scene? Ask yourself, does that really help you appreciate the reality that the people are facing? Um, did the story build? Did you feel it was organized? What did he say or do that made you think he really cared about the people in the story? And then, how did he end the story? What was the call to action? Remember, we emphasized that a lot, the call to action. So, how did he actually do that? What did he say? I mean, did he say something like, $150 will provide a full year scholarship and I'm giving you a chance? Um, when the heifer people send me, their things every 5 minutes, but especially around Christmas time, they say, you can send a goat, or you can send $10 will buy, two chickens, or it's something like that. So make sure that you're listening for what does he do to make this the make people know what the call to action is. Okay, Meschac, ready?
Hey, thank you so much for meeting with me. It's been a while. I've wanted to have a chance to talk to you about this organization that I've been involved with. It's an organization, and I spent 5 years in Haiti working in this community. It's a rural village that's called T West. I saw thousands of people. They were working by a, a broken water pump, and that water actually made them sick. And in fact, I heard the World Health Organization reported that there is a sense of urgency in this particular community. Then I met this wonderful lady. Her name is Joanne. She's a very talented young woman, and she had a brilliant idea to solve the problem. And she started this organization that's called Access. And what they do, they start and install clean and safe water pumps throughout the village. And since the organization started, we were able to install 3 sustainable and clean water pumps. And then the other amazing thing about the work of Access is that not only that they install those pumps, but also they work with the villagers in creating committees that are managing and keeping those pumps organized and working and safe. So it's amazing the work that they're doing. And so Access has been key in providing training and in helping them to understand the proper sanitary way of managing the pump. But now the many other communities and villages nearby are facing similar problems, and Access would like to continue and replicate the success that we have had in the West. And that will enable and help families, tons of families, to have access to clean and safe water. So this is a chance for us to make this a reality. And this is an issue that actually, because of so many communities have the similar issues, this is something that we can actually take nationally. Each pump costs about $2,500, and that includes installation. So we are considering gift right now for 5 new pumps, and those 5 new pumps will be two will be installed to finish up with T West. There's 2 very far areas that we still haven't covered, and then the other 3 will install each in one new communities that will allow them to start working through and understand the process and actually have access to clean and safe water. But you can also give us $2,000. With $2,000, we can still buy a new pump, but we'll have to fundraise the 500 extra dollars to cover the installation cost. But the reality is, every dollar that we can raise counts, and it is a huge step forward as far as getting much needed and clean and safe water and make that a reality to these villages. The health problem, the health problem associated with unclean water is huge. Hope to thousands and thousands of people just by installing and having clean and water pump available for them. Would you join us and make that a reality?
excellent. Do you want to put the question and answer mode on so people could maybe share a couple of thoughts about how well you did, what you did?
Yes.
Okay, so who would like to mention something, that Meschac did? How did he do it? How did he get people excited? How did he get people to want to listen to this story? How did he set the scene? I'm going to give a second in case someone wants to answer. Okay, in case no one wanted to or the technology isn't working, I'll answer. One of the things I noticed that was really quite cool was he said he said he'd spent 5 years in this place and he saw thousands of people walking past broken water pumps to get unsanitary water. Well, you can imagine, ew, ew. But then he added, the World Health Organization thinks this is critical. So now you have some outside evidence. So now I'm kind of interested. And then he got kind of excited about meeting Joanne and giving her complete credit for the idea, which is right because it was hers. And so you're not portraying the people of the community as victims, or you're not hurting their dignity. You're showing them as people who want to take care of themselves and are doing a good job. So that's the kind of people we want to give to, right? People are taking action. So that was good. What about his call to action? How was that? Okay. We've got some now. We've lost the video, we've lost the audio, but someone said, I liked how specific you were about how much you needed and how much it cost. Exactly right. It was very clear. $2,500 and you got the pump and you got it installed. I liked the part where, because my donor would have wanted to know, yeah, well, you get it in there and then it breaks down and what happens? Now, it's a question no one had to ask because Meschac covered it in the presentation. He said, and they train local people to manage the pumps and to keep them safe and to keep them operating. So I thought that was also an excellent, excellent thing. Other comments? Would you join us? He told how much they needed. He's given them, if you don't have the whole 2,000, whole 2,500, we can get the other 500. Just give us the pump. So it was pretty clear. We're bringing hope to thousands. Would you join us? Who could say no to that? So I think what we're trying to do is remind you, this is something you can do. This is not high tech. This is something you've been doing all of your life. The more thoughtful you are about it, the easier it will be to do. And we've given you some hints, some questions to answer in your presentation. And I open it up for questions.
This is a wonderful presentation. I just wanted to make a comment that I also find it's really helpful to mention One World Children's Fund and our partnership with the organization, and the fact that 100% of the funds the donor will contribute go to our partner organizations, and that our partners as well as ourselves have been vetted. All those things are really valuable because it gives so much so much credibility.
Excellent point. Absolutely. I found
I think
that
this is a good point. Very good point, in fact. Yeah, it is a very good point because you know, people want to know, and I think that's one of the questions that Debra has raised throughout the presentation. She said, make sure that you know the questions that the donor is going to ask, and then incorporate that in your presentation. I think that is one of the questions. And when she had mentioned they want to know whether or not the money will go directly to the program, and I think that is very very important. And when you mentioned One World Children's Fund and mentioning that the money is going to a credible um, to a credible network. It's going to One World Children's Fund, but also not just going through, but it's 100% of it that's going to be going toward the program. I think that's important. I know Debra probably had something to mention on that as well.
other questions or handy comments that will help people like this?
You have been muted.
Well, if there is no other questions, then I'm going to say thank you everybody for attending. We have a couple things before you leave. One is that we have a few other webinars coming and the Champion Day. Yay, I get to see a lot of people. So on Tuesday, May 10th, at about the same time, we're going to have another webinar, and that's going to be on graphic design, social media, video editing, infographics. So that's sort of help you presenting the impact, make it easy for people, especially if you're sending emails or you're posting on social media. So those are some skills that I think are key and important, and would like to be able to share that. And also one thing I want to mention is that everything that we talked about here today is also available for you to access on a one-on-one. So if you feel you're more comfortable in talking to me or even talking to Debra or to another champion, then we would want to make sure that we make that available for you. And on Saturday, June 25th, from 9 to 1 at One World office, we'll have the Champion Day. And usually this is a really fun day. And in fact, when I first started, that was one of the best things that I found that we could ever done. It's having all the champions come together, and we're talking and sharing and get some training going. And there's a lot of peer learning, a lot of networking. So I think it's a great environment to be. So we'll have that as well. And then there's going to be another webinar coming on holiday giving, which we had last year, and we had some really good feedback on it. So we're gonna expand that again and just make that available in terms of crowdfunding, events, emails, make the ask. A lot of the content that we talked today will probably sort of be repeating because fundraising is nothing new. It's a lot of the same thing that we do, but we just want to improve and then keep following the trends. So we're going to make sure that we help you in doing that and get you ready for Christmas and for Giving Tuesday, those kind of things. And then the other thing is I've shared that learning and networking opportunities through an email. So if you go to this link, it would be if you just click on the learning, because we'll share the PowerPoint with you. It's really, there's a lot of really good webinars and conferences and tools in in this file that I shared. So I really urge you to take full advantage in using those information. It would be very helpful to you. And then the other thing is also to this webinar, we have lots of resources and things that we had actually used and that Katie, the previous program manager, had used as well. So we want to make sure we share that with you and some of the tools that you can use and get you ready to, to tell the donor story. And if you want to send out emails, then you know where to actually use PictoChart. You can do that through them, Infogram or Canva. They help you create really simple and very nice design. And then all those different articles and guides that you can use to learn more about storytelling. Because really what we do is we just bring or crumble a few things together to help you give you some key points. But I think there's a lot more to storytelling than what we just told you. That would be it. We have a short survey. Feel free to give us some feedback. It would be wonderful. And thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Debra, for helping and putting this together. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing all of you at Champions Day.